until he became president, I thought, a guy who actually owns planes, who never went outside of his own country, who never went to Europe. When I was 16 years old, all I wanted to do was, I was curious about the whole world. And I think that incuriosity that Bush and people like him have informs our foreign policy, informs our politics, informs the way we see the world. That incuriosity, that idea that we just live here in this tiny little box, and these are the rules in this little box. And when I found out that he had never been to Europe, that was the inspiration really to write Passing Strange, because I was comparing my curiosity about the world, my hunger to know about the world, to him who had the world at his feet, and could hop into his dad's plane and go anywhere he wanted, and he never did. And I thought, why didn't he, why was I so hungry to go to Europe, and why was he not? And that really was the inspiration for the play. I'm not joking when I say he really was. When I found out that fact, I knew what I wanted to write about immediately. I wanted to write about curiosity, about travel, about thinking outside of your little neighborhood, your neighborhood of a country,
You mentioned the show is closing.
Yeah.
Why is that happening? You just won a Tony.
That would be a question you could probably ask the producers better than me. Broadway is like it's a money machine. It's not like when you're off Broadway, you have a subscribership, they come to see the play for 2 months, and then everybody leaves and the play closes when it's supposed to close, and that's fine, Broadway is a profit-oriented world. It's a business.
Did your play change? Were you forced to change anything?
No, not at all.
If you hadn't been Stew, would you have changed? Was there pressure to change?
Of course there was pressure to change. No, we fought every single note that we got.
What did they want changed?
I think people wanted ultimately a more accessible play. I mean, I could give you a list of things,
Like?
Well, I can't. One thing I can't tell you because it has to do with the Indian. I don't want to give the Indian away, but I can guarantee you that they, wanted things that other plays have, other musicals have. The big closer at the end of the first act. Our play, the first act ends on a very somber note. You don't do that in musical theater. You just absolutely do not do that. You're supposed to end like this, and everybody comes to the front of the stage and goes, "Whoa!" And we don't do that. We do the exact opposite of that. And there are tons of things in the play. We make references to things and to people and historical events, and even we make references to modes of living that a lot of people in the audience might not understand.
Like?
And like the autonomen, anarchists who live in Berlin, who live in the Kreuzberg area of Berlin, people who on May Day who throw rocks and Molotov cocktails at police. We knew that subculture in Europe might not be really well known, but to take it out of the play would have been a lie. So we left it in and are leaving people to sort of figure it out for themselves, those who don't know. And in other words, we don't think it's a sin to have something in a play that everybody doesn't understand. Whereas I guarantee you, in most musicals, every single thing that happens on that stage is so simple and so watered down that they make sure that everybody will understand it. And to me, some ideas are worth maybe walking out of the theater and looking at and looking up on the web and going, what is an anarchist? A lot of people in the crowd don't even know what an anarchist is. A lot of people are like, so why are they throwing rocks at the police? What are they angry about?
What is an anarchist to you?
To me, well, the people I lived with had very, they would even object to definitions, because the people that I lived with in squatted houses in Berlin were really about, they call themselves autonomen, which means autonomous, and their thing was defining their own reality, not a reality from a book. Defining their own political reality. Even some, certain squatted houses had their own way of thinking and behaving, and they might not have anything to do with the squatted house next door.
Even the reference to squatted, explain.
Well, yeah, okay. In Europe, you have...
Here too.
Yeah. I don't know much about the squatted house scene here, but in Europe, you have people who have gone into buildings that were uninhabited and started to live there illegally. And in Europe, this has been something that's been going on for quite a long time now, and I lived in those are the places I lived when I first went to Europe. As a musician, there was a network of these different squatted houses, and you would go there and you would do shows there and you would meet people and have parties there, and that was kind of my world, And what was interesting about that to me was that these people were not these people, their lives were political. It wasn't like they were just sort of doing politics and then doing other things. Every second of their lives was defined by their beliefs. Their ideas informed their everyday lives, which was a huge influence on me as an artist, because it wasn't like, well, I'm doing this 9 to 5, and then I go home and I do this other thing.
Now the show is closing here,
Yeah.
although it's also opening in the sense that Spike Lee is going to make it accessible than many more that could have fit into that theater.
Absolutely.
And where do you go from here?
I am excited about working on my next project, next projects. I mean, we have to, Heidi Rodewald is my musical collaborator. We want to make more records. We want to make another music theater piece. We have a film we want to make. We're pretty backlogged now because we didn't think this Broadway thing would even happen. You know what I mean?
By the way, were you a fan of musicals yourself?
Not particularly. No, I'm from LA, so I mean, I don't know. I didn't know much about musicals. I had seen like 2 when I started writing this.
And you talked about the pressures and standing up to them, saying, no, I'm not going to change this. So what do you have to say about young people about that?
When I talk to schools, and they think that we're, like young theater students think we're cool because we said no and that we got this cool play on Broadway, which is kind of a miracle. But what I tell them is that the reality is that as much as it's flattering to be looked at as some kind of hero in this respect, we said no because I'm 46 years old and I've been saying no for my entire life. I haven't been making commercial music. I've never made art in order to make money. I've certainly never made art in order to make a profit. What I tell young people is that you are going to have to decide whether you want to say no forever. Because when they hand you the money, the first thing they say, I mean, I heard these things. They will look at you and say, this can be bad for your career. Don't you want a career in this business? I've heard that. Don't you want a career in this business? I mean, it's just like in the movies. They say the same things that people say in the movies. They look at you and they go, don't you want a career in this business? Now, if you're 23 and someone says that to you, that's going to terrify you. Me, 46, it's no big deal because I've been underground all my life. So this was just like a little social experiment to go to Broadway and see what happens. It was fun to say no because, like I said, I've been saying no all my life. But for a 23-year-old to decide I'm going to say no and I'm not going to compromise, that's a much bigger decision, and they have to really think about that. And I think if they say no, I think they'll end up, not hating themselves in the morning.
And yet,
but they might not be as rich.
There are things you said no to, and there are big ways that you have changed. It seems to me you're talking about knowing when to compromise and knowing when not to, like just entering Europe the way you did.
Right. Yeah. I mean, there's it's the thing about being an artist also, and the big lesson, like what have I learned from being in Berlin versus America? It's hard to be an artist here. Because no one really thinks art is important here. Let's face it. You spend 2 days in any European capital, and you will see that they take art more seriously than we do. And the reason why I think we don't take art seriously here is because art is always sort of an inherent kind of critique of society. Because you're seeing this one person's point of view, and you're saying the world wasn't right, and I have to put this cup here to show you, that's my critique. Because this was empty first, and then I'm putting this here, and that's my critique, that's my point of view, that's my art piece. And in some way, that's political to me, To me, art is inherently political. Not political like left or right or center. Political as in it's a point of view that you are forcing on people and saying, I want you to look at this, I want you to look at the world this way. And I think in some weird way, we don't like that here. I don't know if that's because of the ancient sort of Puritan influence, where like art is just, sometimes I think Americans feel like, well, there's cows to milk and there's reruns to watch. Why do we want to, art's not important. Art is this other thing. Art is extra for us, And culture's not extra, I mean, the term agriculture and culture are etymologically connected. You know what I mean? Culture is not unnecessary. Culture isn't extra. Culture is just as important as milking the cow, you know? And I think that when I'm in Berlin, I feel like my job, being an artist, is something I can say that I do at the dinner table, and people don't go, oh. It's just a job. It's not an exalted thing. It's not a glorified thing. I don't think I'm any better than anybody. I think it's a job. And we say that in the play, that it's a job like, songwriting is a job like any other. And that's what I think.
Well, Stu, thanks for doing your job.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It's an honor to be here, really.
Stu, playwright, composer, force behind the Tony Award-winning Broadway play Passing Strange. It closes this weekend. The last few productions will be filmed by Spike Lee. And that does it for today's broadcast. If you'd like a copy of today's show, you can go to our website at democracynow.org for the DVD, for the transcript, for the